everyone to Straight from the Paws. Today I have quite a few guests with me and my co-host Bev.
Hi.
There's Bev again. And I have Denise DeVillis-Lopes, who is here in a couple of capacities, but basically she's our newest board member, as well as revamping our new foster program. Welcome, Denise.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming. And of course, there's our administrator, Casey Fredette, as always. And we still have Lupita with us, so she's still in foster care. So if you saw last month's show, you know a little bit about Lupita, but she's here again today, so we're very happy because she's still with us, and that's a wonderful thing. So I want to explain to our audience what we have. We've had a foster program at Forever Paws for, since we've been in existence, but it kind of got waylaid and we didn't know exactly what to do with it. So I love to give people titles, and I was talking to Casey about what do we need to do, and he said, well, we need to really work on, I need someone telling me what the foster program. I said, great, now we have a new foster coordinator, and that would be Denise. So we gave her a nice title, and now she's working with us.
loves to give titles.
I do love to give titles because it makes people feel important, and it sounds good on paper. And it sounds good on the TV as well. So anyway, Casey, talk a little bit about the foster program as is and what we're going to do.
So we've always had the foster program, like you said. Every shelter essentially has a foster program. There are a number of issues that can occur with the animals that a shelter's environment and situation is inappropriate for their care and or just not the best situation for their care. Not too long ago we had a dog that had been completely feral that went into a foster home because it was terrified. Every noise, it scared it, and a shelter is a busy place. We have open hours, 11 to 4, every day but Wednesday, and there's people coming through from the general public, there are volunteers, there are staff. We have animals that give birth. We have animals that are orphaned that have immune systems that aren't ideal for taking in everything. So think of an animal shelter almost like an airport, where you have a lot of people coming and going. They're coming from different areas. They have different immune systems themselves. They've been exposed to various things in different areas of the world. It's the same for an animal in the shelter. So we might go to Logan International and there's people coming from Europe and South America. Well, if you look at the scale, if you have these animals that are 6 pounds, 3 pounds, or newborn animals that are at a shelter with animals coming from our contracts of Fall River, Westport, New Bedford, our surrenders or transfers from other states, including our neighbor, Rhode Island, it's a lot. It's a huge barrage for an elderly animal like this sweet old lady, or
Thank you.
or a newborn animal that hasn't had time to boost its immune system. So the need for foster homes is a very serious issue because it's in the best interest of the animals. Flip side of that, foster programs are detail intensive and can take up a lot of time. And you need someone that can approach it in a methodical way, organize things, keep on top of things, because for instance, we've always had a number of fosters, but Betty went to Antarctica for 6 weeks. Beth is in Arizona for X number from November 1st on. Bev goes to Florida when we're lucky. So you have to know those things, or at least have some idea of those things. And in order to have a successful foster program, you have to have a lot of fosters. So that's a lot of people to keep track of. So to give you that whole build-in, Denise, her former life, as I understand it at least, was as a pharmacist and business owner. And so one day watching Denise organize files in a way that just made me kind of want to sob. Because I couldn't, the way she approached it was just so organized, so methodical, that I was just like, whoa. I thought, you know, that's the perfect sucker for lady for the foster program.
That's right.
So we approached Denise and we suckered her in and begged her and bribed her and did anything and everything we could to dump the foster program on her very organized mind.
Yes, and Denise, you came in at a time where you also go away. You go to visit family in Texas, and you're there in Texas. So you have that going on. But what have you done so far to help our foster program? Anything going on? How many, do you know how many foster families we have at this point?
Well, going back in our previous files for people who have applied to be fosters, I have followed up with them. Some have not responded, some have. As a matter of fact, we're meeting somebody today who possibly may take in a pregnant cat. Awesome. And that's really a situation that would be so helpful for the animals. We just had a pup who gave birth, and it wasn't the most ideal situation to bring up puppies. Right. But now that we have a developing foster program, we'll most probably, hopefully, be able to get all of these types of animals into foster. It's a slow process. However, it's building. It's growing.
Now, let me ask you a question. If someone wanted to be a foster parent, that's what we call them, or a foster home, what would they need to do?
Well, what they need to do is give us specifics as to what they're interested in and what their capacity is as a foster.
Okay, are you going to do you have to do a home visit to their home?
Ideally, yes.
Okay.
Unless they can describe the situations that they have, we can also go on and see where they live according to address. But typically, we probably would not be going often, but in certain situations we would.
Would we be checking to see if the person, for example, they live in an apartment, and would you have to check to see if the landlord would allow that?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
So that's happening. So, Bev, you're here in a different capacity today.
Yes, I am.
You do not have your foster dog with you.
Correct.
And there's a reason for that.
Yes, there is.
There is a reason, because she would not be as calm as Lupita, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
So I ended up with one of those fosters that did not do well in the shelter environment. I believe when my little foster came into the shelter, she was put into a kennel. Is that correct?
Correct.
And didn't do well in the kennel, so they put her in the airline carrier.
Yes,
And
to
she
give her a sense of security, so she didn't have to guard so much open space.
And that was a failure too.
Yep.
So then I believe the next thing is she went to another foster mom named Betty, who travels a lot.
Yes.
So Betty's a great foster mom, but short term, unless she's, knows her schedule ahead of time, which she usually does. So if somebody has a broken leg, Betty's a great place to go because it's short term. When Betty went on vacation, we needed to have another foster mom for this dog. Betty's environment was calm, quiet, no other animals in the house, and not a lot of people coming around. So it was a quiet environment, especially to give her that comfort that she needed in the beginning. But then when Betty was going away, I took her on. Well, whoa, lo and behold, my house is very loud, very noisy, and I do have other pets.
No.
Yes.
You're chaotic?
Yes, chaotic. And we have a lot of meetings at our house. So what ended up happening, we found out a whole other side of my foster dog. My foster dog does not like people. My foster dog doesn't like noise. My foster dog doesn't like other animals. So we did have a major problem with my foster dog. So I am committed for a long term. I'm going to put a year limit though. After a year, we should be able to do some serious work with my foster dog.
Can you tell us a little bit what you've done so far with this dog?
So my foster dog is a rat terrier named Rudy. I think I ended up getting Rudy from Betty at the end of August, the beginning of September of last year. So in that time, I worked on her myself by taking her out for long walks and you know, trying to introduce her to the environment, giving her a safe place to live. But that wasn't working. She was so anxious. A car going by would panic her. A squirrel, she'd want to chase it and yank my arm out. So I ended up contacting another foster mom named Beth, and Beth had a trainer come to her house with a foster dog. So I contacted the same one. I believe his name was Mark Ventura. He came to the house, and he said, well, I have to tell you, any other shelter, that dog would have been put down because she was severely aggressive. So he did work with me for an extended period of time, coming to the house. And we did control a lot of her crazy behavior. And we worked with her on a constant daily thing, going outside, working with her, walking by strangers, walking by other dogs. He taught me all that stuff that I needed to do with her, which worked great. So when he was done, he said, if you need me again, give me a call. So what ended up happening, I tried everything that he did, and we still had issues with her regarding company. She tried to go after and kill anybody that walked into the house. So that was a big issue, obviously. The other thing that I did was I tried reinserting her back into the shelter for like an overnight and letting the staff work with her for a little bit. So we're still doing that. We're still bringing her back for a night or two so that the staff can handle her, walk with her, feed her, and then we bring her back to a safe environment again. So that's what I've been doing with her.
The process I'd like to point out is that Bev also has, the dog is bonded with you, and
Yes.
that's a big issue.
Well, that's also a problem.
It is a big issue. It's good in some ways, in some ways it's not as good. But when Betty did come back to the house to take her for a few days, when you went away, she seemed to be recognized Betty and was okay to go with Betty.
And she did go with Betty.
She did go with Betty.
Right, she went with Betty for
Which
quite
was
some
good.
time. And Betty said she was fine. She went right back into the mold again of being fine at Betty's house. And then Betty brought her back, and she got right back into the mold of our house. So the good thing about that is she can bond to other people, and she does bond to Betty. What I have now done with Rudy is she went to agility classes, and she did excel in agility. The only issue we had with her is I couldn't let her go off leash to go through the tunnels. But she did very well in agility. She's a very hyper dog, and I have to say, even the trainer said she's a smart dog. She remembers a lot of things. So she did well in agility, and now she's in basic obedience class with other dogs and other people walking around the ring, doing sit, stay, heel, and she's very smart and remembers things very fast. So my next step with her is I have a trainer coming to the house again, a different trainer, who's going to work on people approaching her. Just so everybody knows, in the whole time I've had Rudy, no one can pet her except me. And once in a while, she allows you to pet her.
Once in a while.
She's trusting Gail. And our handyman, Harry, comes to the house, and he's able to move around a little bit with Rudy, and she tolerates him. He can sit down, have a cup of coffee at the table, and she'll just fall asleep on the couch. So we are getting a lot of improvements. With Rudy, in a foster program, she is a slow, trusting dog. So it's long-term fostering with me, as opposed to the short-term 6 weeks, 8 weeks foster.
And I also think that one of the things that you've tried, and I think you should mention and tell our audience, is about the holistic approach as well.
So with Rudy, the first thing we did, I talked to Casey about Rudy, and we did put her on a medication. She is such a high anxiety dog that her entire body quivers. I believe when we did the show, Denise came to the house today to pick me up, and she saw Rudy. Her entire body just shakes. It's like an earthquake in a little dog. She can't control that shaking yet. So we did put her on a medication, a human medication. I believe it's called trazodone. And that medication has helped a lot, calming her down. And then we went a holistic route. She is now on CBD oil. The CBD oil has also made a drastic change in her personality. she's able to learn. She's able to be calm enough to learn the sit, the stay, the heel, the down. She's calming in the house. And then we met with our holistic, she's not a veterinarian. What is she? Oh, holistic.
She's a holistic.
She's a holistic person.
She practices
Holistic medicine
Out
with
of Fairhaven-
animals.
Fairhaven.
Out of Fairhaven, and she comes to our shelter to work with our animals. Her name is Christine White, and she also met Rudy, of course not touching her, but observing her. And she also gave me a holistic approach, another holistic approach. I believe it's called phosphate. Is that?
That
It's
sounds,
a phosphate.
yes.
So she, I give her, and they're tiny grains of salt. I give her 9 of those tiny grains of salt, put it under her gum line, and they absorb into her body. And I did that approximately a week ago, and I then contacted Christine, and she said to do it again. And that also is supposed to help calm her. So, I mean, Denise was there today when we're taping our show, and with all of that medication, you saw how she shakes. You saw her when she came to pick me up for this show. She's sitting there in a sit-stay, and her body is shaking. Her fur is all standing up on end. So even with all of that holistic medicine, the trazodone, she still is high anxiety.
So Bev, as usual, opened a ton of doors on that journey she just took us on. And one of them is the trazodone is human and animal. It crosses over for uses. It helps
It has
humans sleep.
they don't need to do like a liver test or a blood test
Right.
on the trazodone. That's why we picked it.
Right, but humans use it to help with sleep, and with the animals, it's used to help calm them on a maintenance dose. Is one thing. Another door that Bev opened is our animals, while they're in foster, we support the fosters. We have a veterinarian who's been on the show previously, Dr. McNerney, that is into the shelter typically once a week. We have Dr. Comstock, who will volunteer for rabies clinics. So we deal with the vaccines, we deal if there's a medicine, a medication like what Beverly was saying, we supply that medication for the foster home. So we try to support the foster home so that we are helping them with whatever the animal needs. Because we don't want to make a situation where people aren't able to foster because it's prohibitive. People might worry about vet costs, about the
Training
cost
costs.
of medicine.
Right.
So the shelter, we supply what's needed for the animal during its foster. Also, even like you mentioned, Christine White, the homeopath, that's through the shelter as well. She volunteers her time generously. So we are able to support the foster homes with a lot of things. We'll work to try and find training. We supply, like I said, the vaccines we can do in the shelter. And if we can't, we use, I believe, 6 or 7 vet clinics at this point.
Yes, we have a lot of vet clinics.
Yes, that we work with. So if there is an issue or something that needs to be addressed immediately, we will work with the foster home to get them into one of the clinics that we work with.
And we also provide the beds and the bedding and the food,
bedding
the
and the
storage,
blanket, the
anything
food.
that they need, we'll supply. And one of the things I do want to point out to our audience is that if you do get a foster animal, that you really need to let the staff know, well, this isn't working, I'd like to try something else. And then work with the staff. Of course, Bev has an advantage of being on the board. She just calls up and says, this is what I want to do.
I had to change the food. She was getting extreme diarrhea.
Yep.
Casey goes on board with her and says, okay, Beverly, let's
get a different
at this
food.
point, let's move on. So it's good. I mean, but we do work as a team. Now, going a little bit back to Denise. Denise, if someone was to want to consider being a foster family, what do they have to do at this point?
They'd have to get in touch with us at the shelter, specifically me. They would fill out an application. We would find out what it is that they could do, what they can't do. For example, I reached out to somebody the other day and they wanted to know specifically what they had to do. And I went the full gamut. I said, if you want to do some basic, if you want an animal that needs basic animal medical care, you can provide that. We're not asking you to do anything intrusive or sterile or for most part sterile. Okay. Sometimes the medical just entails eye drops or the administration of medication, maybe a changing of a dressing. But otherwise, they have full support of the shelter. As you said, they're provided with everything. Monetarily, it doesn't cost them anything. And all they have to do is provide emotional support, a comfortable home, a nurturing home, and as I said, maybe some basic medical care.
Well said. Well said. Now, Bev, some people will say, I can't do that because I'm going to get attached to the dog. And I know you have done 3, that have been in at the end of, the end of the year, the end of their life, and that's very difficult. That takes a special type of home. But Bev, what happens with you with fosters? How does that work?
Well, I've fostered a lot. Now, I've been a part of Forever Paws going on, I can't remember the years. 600 years. So I've been a part of Forever Paws a long time, and I've handled a lot of fosters. I was one of the first foster moms way back in the 90s, believe it or not. I've had a lot of animals pass away in my care. I've had a lot of animals that I had to euthanize in my care, and a lot of animals gave birth in my care with a lot of the kittens and puppies, and a lot of animals that were old and passed away on their own. So I ran all that gamut. What I never did was, I was never a foster failure. We gently use that term as a foster failure. A lot of new foster moms fall in love with their animal and can't give it back. So we call them a foster failure. Gently, it's a loving term.
Foster failures can be a mixed bag where sometimes you lose a home, and then there's the situation which I believe Kathy Perry, who's one of our volunteers, she foster failed, which was fantastic because the dog needed to stay where it was.
Right. All right. Exactly.
It was best for the animal to live with her for the rest of its life.
So that does happen. Sometimes the foster mom bonds, and they're not used to this. I'm used to it. So yes, I love my foster dog, and she loves me. But as we know, because owner surrenders, people come in, they're crying their heart out, they have to surrender their animal. Landlord says they can't keep it. And then we find another home, and that animal loves another person. Right. So we know that up front. I know that up front. I've seen it many times, as you have. Many animals, they love their person, and they love the person that feeds them and gives them comfort. And they're fickle. Animals are fickle. So I can give my foster dog to another person. My foster dog's going to fall in love with another person, and that's what's going to happen. So what we do as foster moms, we want this dog to have love and comfort and care and nurturing. That's what we want as a foster mom, and then we give that dog back to somebody else to do that. And animals adjust very easily, as we all know.
Well, and the big difference between a feral animal and a domesticated animal is the domesticated animals, the pets, do very well with stability, which is part of the issue with shelter life. It's transient, it's ever-changing. The people are different every day. The surrounding animals are different. So it can really cause some animals to have stumbles on their way to a new home, that they get stressed out. One of the real benefits to us in acquiring Denise into this position is her clinical background. It's a real gift to the animals that Denise has an idea, like you even just heard her talking about sterile environments and procedures, and she has that background that she's able to help people, especially the ones that have the potentially hospice. We use foster for a number of things, end of life, beginning of life, stress, or if we just have too many of a certain species in the building. So Denise is able to bring a lot to her position to support the foster families and the animals.
So really, she just wasn't a sucker. We really just knew exactly what we needed.
It was a perfect match.
We knew what we needed in that match, and we got Denise on board, and we greatly appreciate it. See, you didn't even know you had all that background in you, did you?
Jeez.
Yeah, I know. Impressed.
Goodness,
You're impressed, aren't you?
Yeah.
That's what I'm telling you. You learn a lot of things on this show. You really do. And I like what you just said about, with the animals and stuff. I think people need to understand, it's important and that why, shelters are great. I mean, we try to do the best we can. We have music going on for the animals. We have certain CDs that are specifically for cats, some for the dogs. We do all that. We do the enrichment programs as much as we can. The staff is very good about it. They bring a lot of their own supplies in sometimes. Animals sick, we use the rice. We have the peanut butter. We do all the stuff that we possibly can for the enrichment. But sometimes, as Casey says, there's certain cases that just need that extra TLC, and as you pointed out, a nice environment, a quiet environment, and that's what happens. So today on our show, I want to thank you all, three of you, for coming. I really appreciate what what you've said today, because I think the audience needed to hear that. It's just not about, and foster failures are okay.
They are. We say that lovingly.
We say it lovingly. We had a neighbor that ended up taking 2 cats to California with her. She did one foster, and then it was another foster, and then she just couldn't give it either one. So she ended up taking them, and they live very nicely in California and have their own room, and it's very, very nice. And sometimes that works. But we do need people sometimes for short term, sometimes for a long term. And we keep talking about foster moms, but if you're a single male dad, we'd also appreciate taking a look at someone that would be able to run out and, families run out in there.
Children are good with the puppies.
It just depends, and we'll work as we do with all our adoptions to try to find the best family or single person or whatever, what it may be, to get them into the environment and the animal into the correct environment, because that's what we're all about. That's what we are all about, continually trying to find the best home, as we say, the forever home for each and every animal, whether it be that little rat or a bird or a pig, a guinea pig, whatever it may be. We try to find the best home. And sometimes people get offended by us because they say, well, what did I do wrong? You didn't do anything wrong. Sometimes it's just the luck of the draw and how we work it out. And it'll be the same thing with the foster program. So if anyone out there is willing to try to foster, Denise would really appreciate the candidates for coming in to help us out. We're looking for you to call Forever Paws. Give a call. If Denise is not available, we'll have someone help us out with that as well, and we continue going on with that. Any last 2-second words from anyone?
Applications for fostering are available online, and if you search our Facebook.
Okay. All right. Thank you, folks.
Thank you.